All right, we are recording. So you can go get started, Rohit.
Hello everyone, I'm Rohit Dheeraj and I'll be presenting today on the topic Deep Reinforcement Learning Based Control for Ship Navigation. The aim of the project was to create a deep reinforcement learning model which is able to track a trajectory which is composed of waypoints. So given any given any trajectory which has many waypoints, my ship should be able to successfully reach each one of them consequently. So first, let's see about how I'm modeling the ship dynamics, and then I'll explain the DQ1 algorithm. This is the oral algorithm that I'm using. And later we'll see how I'm using this algorithm for the case of ship navigation, and finally we'll discuss the results. So for the ship dynamics, I'm using the KCS ship model. I obtained the hydrodynamic coefficient from this paper that I have mentioned here. In that paper, they used planar motion mechanism to derive the hydrodynamic coefficient for the KCS ship model of scale 75.5. And here is the hydrodynamic coefficients here in this table. And I hope you all know what this C is. The C is the straight line stability constant. And if you see that when I substitute the hydrodynamic coefficients here, the C will turn out to be negative. So which means the ship is straight line unstable. So actually my plan was to use a linear model, but since C is negative, it is not possible to simulate the dynamics with the linear model. I had to go to a non-linear model. So before going to the equations, I want to explain the how the global coordinates and the body coordinates are present. And the main thing to note here is that when I am talking about cos angle, it is with respect to the global x-axis here and not with respect to the y-axis. And these are the equations of motion that I am solving here. And I'm solving these equations recursively while doing the oral program. So at each time step, the delta will be an input from the oral control and the equations will be solved.
Rohit, can you go back one slide?
Yes, sir.
All right. Can you explain what is beta?
So, okay, beta is here is the drift angle. So drift angle is the angle between the ship's heading and the ship's axis.
Angle between the ship's heading.
With the axis of the ship.
Are you sure this convention is right? Usually when we talk about psi or the heading, it is usually with respect to your longitudinal axis with respect to the x-axis. That is what is psi. Hello?
Sir, I didn't understand. Can you come?
Yeah, usually the heading angle psi
Yes, sir. Yes,
is
sir.
defined as the angle between your positive x-axis
Yes, sir.
of the GCS to the
Yes, sir.
current heading of the vehicle, which is the longitudinal direction, isn't it? That is what is psi.
So, yes, psi here is the cos angle. Yes, sir.
Psi is the heading, isn't it? Shouldn't it be the heading?
No, psi is cos angle.
Psi is, yeah, cos angle. Should it still not be with respect to the body fixed coordinates x-axis?
No, sir. When I'm calculating cos angle error later, I'm using this psi to find the cos angle error. Yeah.
But this angle, if you take a derivative, you won't get r. the derivative of psi with respect to time here need
Yes, sir.
necessarily lead to r. It will not lead to angular velocity. Angular velocity is the time derivative of the heading, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So it should not, but in your equations of motion that you're solving,
Yes, sir.
is psi dot taken as r?
Yes, it is taken as R.
Okay, then there is a problem. Then there is a problem.
Yes, sir. Ship coordinate system figure is wrongly mentioned, sir.
Psi should go to body fixed coordinate. Are you sure, Rohit? I was thinking that maybe it's a mistake in the picture. Are you sure psi is taken as this angle?
Yes, sir.
Between the velocity vector and the x-axis.
No, sir. It's wrongly mentioned in the figure, sir.
No. See, it's not wrongly mentioned. It is how he is considering it. That is how we have to look at it. No, Krishna Velu.
Yes, sir. We have the x-axis.
Usually the convention is with x-axis, but here he is speaking it with respect to u. It will lead to error in the dynamic. Okay, but you're certain, Rohit, that it is with respect to the velocity that is how you have programmed it.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, all right. So then we have to look back at this. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Some of the runs have to be probably rerun. We have to look back at it.
Okay, sir.
Okay, proceed further.
So these are the equations I'm solving to get the to get the dynamics. So here first you have the first these two equations, or you have the couple sway and yaw equations here. And yes, the equations that I'm using are non-linear, but it is non-linear in the sense that I'm using non-linear hydrodynamic derivatives here. So here the F2 prime and F3 prime are non-linear hydrodynamic derivatives, which I mean is higher order terms are there. But the dynamics necessarily is just the same dynamics in the linear equations that we use. And F1 here in the surge velocity equation is the thrust and the hydrodynamic derivatives of in the x direction.
Rohit,
Yes.
I had a question. Like, is the control input in this scenario only the rudder angle?
Yes, only the rudder angle.
Okay, so like, what are you assuming the thrust as? Like, how much value?
Okay. The thrust I'm assuming it to be same as XUU that you saw here. So essentially, when it meets the design speed, the thrust cancel out the resistance. So that was the idea behind.
No, you have the expression for F1, just like you have the expression for F2 and F3.
Yes, sir. I just didn't specify it. It's just once again the rudder hydrodynamic coefficients X. These three rudder hydrodynamic coefficients and the thrust. Yes, that's it.
So XU dot, XUU, and what was the third one?
Yes, sir. XVV, XUU, and XRR.
XRR and XU dot will be the one on the right hand side.
Yes, sir.
Or left hand side. Okay, mention that equation. It is important to understand the dynamics.
Okay.
So Rohit, like you mean to say that since the thrust is constant, the speed of the ship won't be varied. Like we won't be able to control the speed of the ship, right?
No, speed of the ship won't be. Yes, we won't be able to control the speed of the ship.
Okay.
So I have a counter question to that. So if the speed of the ship can't be changed when we are turning, will the speed of the ship decrease?
Yes, sir. Speed of the ship will decrease. That is because while turning, the other non-linear, the hydrodynamic coefficients comes to play. So you thrust no longer will be just be equal to XUU, but the other hydrodynamic derivatives will further decrease the speed of the vessel.
And when you remove the rudder, it will come back to its original speed.
Yes, sir. Yes, it will come back to its original speed.
All right.
I performed the model test like turning circle maneuver and zigzag maneuver. So the main aim being just to test if my model is stable, and but also on the other hand, in order to do the oral code, first I have to understand what my ship can do. So when I did the turning circle test, I came to know that the turning circle radius was about 2.3 times the ship length. So this we have to keep in mind before going to the oral training stage, because you cannot expect the ship to reach destinations which requires a turning circle less than 2.3 times the ship length.
Okay, I know the answer to the question that I'm about to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway for the benefit of the others.
Okay, sir.
In your table which you had, we did not
Yes.
have any rudder hydrodynamic coefficients.
Okay.
Right?
How
did we get them?
The rudder hydrodynamic coefficients were actually tuned by me. I chose values of y delta and n delta such that the turning circle radius comes out to be 2.3 times the ship length.
So why the 2.3 being a magic number?
So 2.3 times the ship length was the turning circle radius mentioned in this paper from where I took the KCA ship hydrodynamic coefficients.
So you wanted to match the turning circle radius of the paper because you don't know what the coefficients for rudder are. You tune them so that the turning circle matches.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So that should be made explicitly clear.
Okay. This is a plot of zigzag maneuver. So this is a 2020 zigzag maneuver. So basically, when the ship's heading angle comes to 20 degrees, the direction of the rudder is changed to -20, and yes, vice versa happens. And one of the main characteristics that you want to see here is that the angle of overshoot. So after changing the rudder, how further the ship is going in the same direction before turning. So here you see that the ship's rudder maximum size reaches about 25.86 degrees. So there's an overshoot of about 5.86 degrees. And so this shows about this indicates the course changing ability of the ship. So, any questions till now before we go to the reinforcement learning part?
No questions?
Yeah, Rohit, I had a question.
Yes.
Like regarding the max overshoot angle that you recently explained.
Yeah.
Like, can you explain like if the overshoot angle, maximum overshoot angle is high,
Yes.
like what can we say about the dynamics of the ship? Like is it stable, unstable? Like what can we depict from that? So
it is
just say
difficult to change course. Yes, yeah. If the maximum overshoot is high, it means that the ship takes a longer time to come back to change its direction. Yes. So yes.
okay, so
the
we
course
mean to say that the ship is more stable then, right?
Yes, more stable. Yes.
Okay.
No, maybe not necessarily. Here, your ship is straight line unstable, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Straight line and similar. Yes, sir.
But given that the straight line stability is given, if the overshoot is larger, then it would indicate that it is more sluggish to turn.
Yes, sir.
But when it is unstable, I don't think you can make the same statements exactly. If it is stable, then definitely yes, I would say that you are right. But if it is unstable, not necessarily.
Okay. Sir.
Any other questions?
Sir, one of the statement also said if the overshoot angle is maximum, and then the rudder effectiveness also increases. At the same time, the course stability also decreases.
Yes.
That's right, sir.
No other questions?
Yeah, Rohit, like, may I know the reason why you did the zigzag test?
Okay, first of all, I want to know how fast the ship can turn. So,
Okay, for that.
yeah. Also to see if something fishy happens on the dynamics is unstable or not. Yeah.
Okay, and like, is the zigzag maneuver which you are showing the presentation, is it matching with that Krishna Kutti's paper, or no?
No, it's not matching.
Okay, it's not matching.
How much is the deviation?
I think it's a lot. So yeah, it goes for them up to 35-40 degrees. And
Okay.
for me, the maximum overshoot ends at 25 degrees.
So why do you think there is a discrepancy?
Not sure about that.
Oh, you know the answer. You just said it in the previous slide. Is the Professor Krishnan Kutti's model and your model have the same rudder?
No, they don't have the same rudder. Yes, sir. So,
Obviously, you won't necessarily match the same zigzag maneuver. No
yes,
chance.
sir. Yes.
You're only matching one aspect, which is the turning circle radius.
Turning settlement. Yes, sir.
That doesn't necessarily mean the rudder dynamics is the same. Okay, I'm surprised that nobody else is asking this question. So I'm going to ask this question. Tell me
Okay.
what is the zigzag maneuver?
So, in the start, you give a hard rudder to either a port or the starboard, and say a particular delta value, delta naught, and you wait for the ship to turn and its heading angle to become to a specific value, say psi naught. And when it exceeds psi naught, you change rudder angle from delta naught to minus delta naught, and then you wait for the ship heading to change from psi naught to minus psi naught. When it exceeds minus psi naught, you change the delta to again delta naught. So this is the zigzag test.
You think your curve here is depicting exactly that?
Yes.
Look at the corners.
Yeah, I don't think it's depicting, because if you look at the point when the 20 degree rudder angle ends, like, it's not matching with the blue curve at that point. So we only shift the rudder angle to minus 20 when psi reaches 20 degrees, because it's 20-20 zigzag maneuver, right? So it seems that you
How
shifted
much
the
is the
rudder.
time step here?
0.3 seconds.
Yeah, that is good enough. Usually that should be good enough for these sort of maneuvers. But do you know why that delta is not exactly starting to change? It's starting to change before you reach 20 degrees, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's another reason why your overshoot might be less. Okay, all right. So do you have to probably rerun this and see where the problem is?
Rohit, can you explain the logic how you coded this up to run the simulation? Because I am also trying to do the same thing.
Zigzag maneuver.
Yeah, the zigzag maneuver.
I can share my code with you later if that's okay.
No, yeah, let's just confirm that you just changed the rudder when the psi reaches 20. Is that
Yes.
happening?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, so you pass the state vector to the controller function, correct?
So,
In
yes,
the
sir.
state vector, you will see what is psi, and then you should change. No, I'm just trying to think, because that will still not explain why this is turning before it reaches psi. And I think that is what Ashwin is trying to ask, or trying to kind of collectively give a loud thinking on that. So it is programmed that when the psi reaches 20 degrees,
Yes, sir.
that is when it will start applying a negative rudder.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And yours is instantaneous, isn't it? It doesn't have, no. Is this a continuously changing rudder angle, or is it a,
No, it's not continuously changing.
so there is no first order input. You apply a rudder to the negative 20 degrees, it immediately at that instant changes.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
But from the figure, it seems that it's taking some time to reach that other angle, right? There's a constant slope we can see.
Yeah, it's not instantaneous.
Yeah.
That could be because he's okay. So then I think the problem might not be with his code. It might be with the choice of times that he has chosen on this plot are sparse enough that you're not seeing that happen.
Yes, sir. So I think you can see in the second peak that
Rohit, what
was
kind of solver did you use?
Solve psi in Python. Yeah.
That IVP solver.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
think that
IVP
uses
solver.
Runge-Kutta method.
No, the IVP solver has an inbuilt mechanism that automatically adjusts the step size so you get precise solutions.
No. It may have found a good size solution, but he may have sampled it sparsely, is what I'm thinking when he
Yes,
was.
that shouldn't matter, right? Because the solver solves it for a really small step size, and depending upon what you give us the input sampling space, it just takes the values and outputs it. I think it's something like that.
No, if you default it for the solver, then it will choose its own time step. But I can also do the solving completely and then independently calculate the solution at a set of points that I give. And if I chose those time points sparsely enough, that would explain this behavior, is what I'm thinking.
Okay, I'm not sure if IVP solve does that. I'm just, yeah, it evaluates it at whatever input you give.
No,
Like
for
it
example,
seems.
see ODE45 in MATLAB would do that. You can solve the ODE and get the output as a structure, and then I can specify that I want the solution at these times, and you can use a command called deval in order to calculate the solution at those times.
Like from the documentation, it seems that solve IVP function like solves the differential equation using Runge-Kutta method, and the default Runge-Kutta it uses is explicit Runge-Kutta method of order 5. So unless and until we don't specify the different method, like different whichever method we want to use, it will take that as default.
Yeah, it defaults to Runge-Kutta like this
So in
RK45.
Runge-Kutta, the sampling time is fixed, right?
No, it's
No,
not
no,
fixed.
that-
It has a solver that like it decides it's based on something. I don't really
no,
know.
it is adaptive. I think it uses the implicit Runge-Kutta, Shrenik, if I'm not wrong. Fourth order implicit scheme with an adaptive time step. So which means
No,
based on the solution, it will decrease the time step.
but in the documentation, it's written explicit.
Okay, so Rohit, this is something else to check up. Okay,
Okay, sir.
all right.
so it could have just been a like some plot thing, no, sir. Like based on
It's
the
explicit. The default is explicit Runge-Kutta of order 5.
No, like whatever he plotted in this, if in the x-axis he took some 0.3 seconds of time step, then the plot will be like this only, right?
No, if you took 0.3, then you would have seen a straighter line. That is the contention.
I'm just giving a point as an example because in the second peak you can see that it is closer to the curve, but only in the first and the second, third ones it is a little away from that.
Yeah, and consistently it's not the same distance away, but that is not to say that, see, if you have an error at the first peak, it will cascadingly change the behavior at the next peak.
Rohit, how did you plot this?
Meaning?
Which function did you use to plot it? Just
Math plot lab.
yeah. So you took what did you take as x-axis units?
The time. Yes.
So what was this? At
Second.
what frequency did you plot the points?
I don't get
No,
you.
he's saying how sparse were the points on the x-axis.
Yeah, what was the sample time when you plotted that?
0.1 seconds or less than that? You can remember.
Sir, when you non-dimensionalize stuff and plot it, will time will also get scaled somehow, will it?
Yes, it will get scaled.
Okay. Okay, that's why it's just 10.
Non-dimensional time, Rohit, or is this dimensional time?
Is non-dimensional time, sir. Non-dimensional time.
So
Okay.
my point is, so the rudder should have changed exactly when the psi crosses 20. So what if his data is exactly like that point before 20 and after 20? So it will join those 2 points, right? At that, then we'll obviously get a line like this. But
Correct.
in
If the sampling time is small, then he should not see that happen.
yeah,
But if the sampling time is large, so that is what we are asking Rohit, that what is the sampling time you have chosen for this plot?
So 0.3 seconds. That-
Then that is short enough that no, 0.3,
maybe you could
So
put
I think
0.1.
I could choose a much smaller value because I have run it only for 10 seconds and then 0.3 is pretty big, right?
no, 10.3, I don't know. Maybe
Oh.
try running it with a smaller time step and see whether you still see this behavior. But this behavior basically tells me that, yeah, it could be the case. It could be the case. Maybe
Yes,
that may not be the case.
okay.
Okay, try running it with a lower sampling time and see whether it converges exactly.
Okay, sir, I'll do that.
All right. If any other questions, if not, then you proceed.
Okay, I'll proceed with reinforcement learning. So, reinforcement learning is a machine learning algorithm which is used to train agents by interacting with the environment. So, in the environment, the agent performs actions, and by performing one action, it goes from one state to another state. And whenever it goes from one state to another state by performing an action, it gets a reward. The reward can be either positive or negative. So basically, this is basically a trial and error algorithm. The agent learns the correct behavior based on the reward it gets from the environment by taking actions in different states. So, what is the aim of the agent? There is only one aim of the agent, irrespective of whichever oral algorithm you take a look at. It is to maximize the return that it gets in the episode. So, return is basically a discounted sum of rewards throughout the episode. So for the first time it gets a reward R1, and second time step it gets a reward R2, third time step it gets a reward R3. So the discount here will be R1 plus gamma R2 plus gamma square R3. So now what is this gamma? Gamma here is what is called as a discount factor. So if gamma is 1, that means the reward that you get at much future time step, say r is equal to 100 or 1000, will be equally as important as the reward that you get in the very next time step, r1. But if gamma is 0, that means you're only concerned about the immediate reward that you are getting now. So this is what is called as return.
Okay, so what gamma did you choose in this case?
0.95.
Okay.
So yes, my agent is concerned about the reward that it gets in a future episode, future time steps as well. It's not only concerned about the immediate reward that it gets.
Okay.
So is gamma tuned or you only decided?
Yes, I tried changing the value of gamma multiple times, but yes, most of the programs that you see chooses a value somewhere between 0.9 and 1.
Okay, so it is not tuned, it is just fixed.
Yes, I tried some values and I decided to go with 0.95.
Okay.
So I think the right answer to that is it was not tuned, because if it is tuned, then it becomes a hyperparameter, which you keep changing and then trying to see what happens to the loss function. That is a study, was it done or not, is essentially what he's asking.
No, that was not done. So first, let's take a look at the algorithm Q-learning. Q-learning is one of the basic algorithms of reinforcement learning. It is based off Q values. So Q here stands for quality, because Q value of indicates the quality of the actions that can be taken in a particular state. So, for example, given any particular state, yes, and you are able to take actions, let's say A1, A2, and A3. How will you know which action is best to take? That you can do by comparing the Q values here. So, mathematically speaking, Q value is Q value of say S comma A. What it means that what is the expected value of return that I can get when I start from that particular state S and take the first action as A. So how does the agent take a particular action in the Q value? By comparing the Q values. Say for example, the agent is in state 2, let's say S2 here. What it does is it compares the Q value of action A1 and A2, and it takes the action corresponding to the maximum Q value. So,
one second. Okay.
yeah.
When you say the expected value,
Yes, sir.
it implies it is a stochastic quantity.
Yes, the problem statement may be stochastic, but in my case, it's deterministic. So, there is no need for the expected
value. But if it is a stochastic environment, I
yes,
just
sir.
want to understand whether, can you tell me what does a stochastic environment mean in this context?
Okay, so in some cases, the actions may not lead to deterministic states. So, in the case of my problem statement, you take a rudder action, now say 20 degrees, you know what is going to happen, and that is so. But in some cases, say a computer game where you say decide the action to go left in an environment where there are some probabilities, the agent may not exactly go left. It may go left with a certain probability or go in some other direction in a certain probability. So yes.
No, I think it might be best to explain with your case when you have 3 actions in your case.
Yes, sir.
Like change the rudder to -20 or 0, or change the rudder to +20. In that context, what would the stochastic nature mean?
I'm not sure if there is any stochastic nature in my problem.
No, if it were there, what would that mean is the question. It is not there in your current problem statement, agreed.
Yes,
But
sir. Yes,
if
sir.
it were there, what would that mean?
Okay, so it would mean that if I choose a particular action, rudder angle 20 degrees, with a certain probability, it executes 20 degrees rudder, but with a certain probability, it may execute other actions as well.
Correct. So it may be at a 0-degree rudder angle to begin with, and you commanded it to go to 20. It may stay there at some probability, right? So even
Yes,
if
sir.
you chose the action to go to 20, it may not always go to 20.
Yes, sir.
Lead with that example rather than a computer game next time.
Okay, okay. So, so the main aim in Q learning is to find all the Q values. So once you get the optimum value for all the Q values, you completely know your environment and you know what action to take in what state. But at the initial stage, the agent has no idea about the environment and is totally clueless. So your initial Q values may be some random values or everything will be 0. So how to find the Q values is a question here. And that is done using this equation. This is the equation with which you update your Q values in Q learning when through experience of the agent. So here this will be the new updated Q value on the left hand side, and this is the old Q value that you had before reaching that particular state. And this was the reward that you obtained when you went from the state S to the next state S prime. And gamma here is the same discount factor that we saw earlier in the definition of the return. And yes, that's it. So basically, this equation may look complex, but this is just a weighted average of the old Q value to the new expected Q value. So basically, what this equation says is that if your Q values are ideally converged, then your Q value should be equal to the reward that you get plus gamma times the Q value of the next state that you land in. So ideally, if your program has converged, this term should go to 0. Yes. Any questions?
Yeah, Rohit, like what is the Q on the extreme right? Like the equation on the bottom.
Yeah, sorry, that is Q old. Yeah, Q S comma A, this is old value. Sorry, I didn't mention it. Yeah.
Okay.
No, can you tell me that what is R here?
R is the reward that it gets from going from state S to S prime.
The state, the reward it gets from when it takes an action A from state S.
Yes.
The reward it gets.
Yes, sir.
And eventually it will land up in S prime.
Yes, sir.
Right? And what does this max A mean?
Okay. So while calculating Q values, I'm considering the Q value of the next state corresponding to the action, the maximum Q value, sir. That's it. Yes, sir.
That is the maximum Q value
of the next state. So, for example, if it is going from state S2 to S3, then I am choosing the Q value for for actions. Say it has actions A1 and A2. I'm comparing both and choosing the Q value, whichever is higher. That's yes.
I think it means the max argument. You might want to check up on that.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So A is the action. So you have multiple actions, right? So
yes, sir.
You just for each of the action you get a Q value and choose the Q value for which choose the action for which you get maximum Q values, and that action will be the optimal action in that transition.
So the agent performs.
It will be the same as the maximum Q value.
Yeah. So like you said, if you are going from S1 to S2, you have action 1 and action 2. So depending upon which Q value is greater, you choose that Q value and put it there. And the optimal action will be the Argmax of this, which gives the optimal action.
Rohit, also add one more question. Like in this, you mentioned S and S prime, right? So
yes.
when we go from S to S prime, is there a difference of one time difference, or like is it for a sequence or sequences of time?
One time difference.
One time difference. Okay.
Yeah. So the thing is, you can go from S to S prime by choosing any of the actions, A1 or A2. So depending upon which action it is, you get one Q value for each action, and you choose the maximum. That is this max over A. And to get the optimal action will be the one with the maximum Q value. That is, you will choose Argmax of this thing.
So what would Q of S and S comma A be? Like for which action will that be, and for which state?
You have to calculate it for all the actions and choose the maximum value.
Okay, so for every action, this term max, the max term will be same.
No, depending on which state you are in, the max term will not be the same.
Okay, for a particular state, the max.
Yeah, the transition is from S to S dash.
Yeah.
S to S dash can happen under any of the actions.
Okay.
So you do all of the actions, calculate the Q values of the transition, and choose the maximum of them. That is this maximum.
Okay. And we do this for every action.
Yeah, at every instant you have to do it. You have to go to the next step for all of the actions and choose the max. That is how this. That is how
I
you
think-
calculate this.
I think the
difference.
max a q of s prime a prime that is mentioned, that is for the next state. So initially he was in s and a state s and action a. Like the equation, the term max a of q of s prime comma a prime is that like we take action at the next time step. When it is at s prime, you take an action and you get a various q values for different action. That is q of s prime comma a prime, and you
No,
take max
I
of
think
that.
I think the transition is from S to S dash. Yeah, at least that's what I learned.
No.
You're going from S to S dash.
No, Shrenik is right here that you have transition from S to S dash. The question of this maximum value of Q value, max A of Q, what it is doing is from S dash, you're trying to see what is the most optimum way to go forward from S dash. And you're trying to choose the maximum Q value, or you're choosing the maximum action, or you're choosing the action which will correspond to the maximum Q value, and then you're following it. So that Q value over there is talking about transition from S dash to forward.
I am not sure of that.
I am sure of that.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
And the reward is also calculated for going from state S to S prime.
Correct. So this was
Yes.
the reward which was received when you left S and landed at S prime.
By performing that
Action
particular
A.
action.
Yeah, you took an action A in state S,
Hmm.
and then you got the reward R.
Also, Rohit, like why are you subtracting minus q of s comma a from the term?
Sir, can you repeat that again? How do you get that max?
So you look at S prime, you are already in S prime, and then you're looking at what are the different actions that I can take and which action will lead me to the maximum Q value. And that action is what you're going to choose, and then that is what the Q value there represents.
We are
No,
going
if you
from S
look at the Q
So you're
table,
choosing the argument which will lead to the maximum Q value from
the
there
Q
on.
table is a list. Okay, it's a list of states and actions.
It's
Right.
a list of, yes, for a given state and for a given action, what is the
Yeah.
expected reward?
Yeah.
Correct.
So you're in state A and the transition has happened from S to S dash.
You were in state S, and from there you have now transitioned over. You were in S, now you are no longer in S.
From the equation below, you can see that a would be fixed and a prime would be changing. Would be calculated depending on how much q value we get at that time instant. So over here,
Deterministic manner, but if it were a stochastic manner, even S prime would not be fixed. You may not land up in a particular S prime. And that is what it is saying. You have to take an expected value of all the different S primes you could land in, and what are the actions that you could take from those S primes. Which one is the argument which will correspond to the maximum Q value from there on forward, based on optimal.
Okay, so S prime is not fixed.
S
So
prime
you can,
usually is not fixed.
so depending upon the action, you can land up in any S prime and you're calculating the maximum Q values among those.
When it is a stochastic problem, but here he is not having a stochastic environment, which means that because he knows if he takes an action A from S, he will land up in only one S dash.
Yes.
So there is no question of looking at other S dashes in this particular case. But typically this max A, I think Rohit, you might want to check up on the nomenclature of this. If I'm not wrong, this would be max, not A, but it will be pi, which means that based on the optimal policy, what is the maximum Q value which you can get.
Yes,
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 it is pi. It is pi.
it is
So
pi.
the
Yes.
action is chosen from.
Action is chosen as per the optimal
Yeah.
policy from there on.
So it will be written max A belonging to pi of A, depending on the policy.
Correct.
And Shrenik, you asked me the question, something.
Yeah, like why did you subtract minus q of s comma a from the term?
You are asking about this term here, minus
Yeah.
q of s.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't makes sense, right? Because otherwise this will never be a zero term, and your q values will be getting updated till infinity. This is the error that we are trying to minimize, right? So basically, the thing is that if your q values have converged, your q of s comma a should be equal to the reward that you get plus gamma times the maximum q value of that time, that state. So that's the idea behind this. If your q values have converged, then this is what is called TD error. This term, the coefficient of alpha that you see here, it should become 0. Yes.
Okay. So as time passes, the second term would die down to 0, right?
Yeah.
Or the
Yes.
full
Yes.
bracket. Okay.
Yes. While training, it dies down to 0. Yes.
Like I have a question about this. The max q s prime a prime.
Yes.
In determinate in a fully deterministic thing, how will this be different from this q s a new term on the left hand side? And what is the difference in between these two terms in deterministic one case and the stochastic case?
Okay. So in the deterministic case, so this is the state that you're starting from, and this is the next state that you land up in after taking the action A. So you are going from you are starting from state S, you are taking the action A, and then you are going to state S prime. Okay, that part's clear. And q of S prime A prime is the maximum q value in that state S prime. Yes. And this is for the deterministic case. So in the stochastic case, what happens is there is no guarantee that you are going to one particular state by taking the action A. So you might want to find the expected value of the q value based on the probabilities of landing in different states. Yes.
Okay. I think has anybody asked about alpha so far?
Okay, I didn't explain about alpha. Yes.
Yes. Would you like to do that?
Yes. So alpha here is the learning rate. It is a hyperparameter. So basically, it is a weight about how much you want to update the q values. So alpha is equal to 1 essentially means that you are averaging your old q value with the TD error. You might want to choose an optimal value by experimenting the alpha. If alpha is too great, then it will converge to a suboptimal solution. While alpha, if it is too less, then it gets the process gets stuck, and you won't end up with the optimal parameters.
But what does alpha physically signify? Like, what does it mean?
So alpha is it's a learning rate, and it is by how much you are updating your old q values.
It is not the learning rate. That is for certain. Because learning rate primarily comes up when you are looking at stochastic gradient descent. This is not that. This is not the gradient. This is not taking any gradients here yet. When you are training your network again, that is when you'll take the gradients. But here you're not doing that. Here this alpha is something different.
This is also called learning rate only in Q learning.
No, it's not. It is basically telling you how much you are trying to update or stay the same. If alpha is 0, it means my Q value will not change. Whatever is my old Q value, that is my new Q value. But if alpha is non-zero, it means that I wait my old Q value by a weight of 1 minus alpha, and I weight the new update with the value of alpha.
Yes, sir.
Right? So I'm not weighting the change which I need to make in my Q value as an equal weight between my old state and what the updated state will be. But I rather want to say that I trust my old state better. You kind of try to change it only slightly. That is
Yes,
the
sir.
parameter that you're kind of controlling. It is not learning rate. Okay. It
So
kind
what
of,
is it called then?
yes, Ashwin?
What is alpha called then?
Alpha is telling you, see, every time you are changing, so this time you visited the state, okay? Let's say that your reinforcement learning agent has come back to a certain state. So there is an old Q value stored there, which is telling you that if I take a certain action from that state, these are my expected reward values, right? Now, when you have visited this state for a second time, you have now some extra information. So, and now you want to update that Q value, isn't it? That is what this update rule is talking about.
Yes, but I thought it was called learning rate.
Sir, it is
Yes, I
called
think
learning
Rohit
rate.
is correct. It's called learning rate, and it's a value between zero. It's greater than zero and less than one.
Yes, but what Sir is trying to say that it's function is not as a learning rate, even
Not
though it's called
learning rate.
learning
I'll tell
rate.
you what it is. It is what we call as an exponential running average. From that is where this term comes from. Okay. What it essentially says is, how do I want to update it? How much do I want to place the weight on what my old value was, and how much do I want to place a weight on what the new value is? Learning rate specifically implies that you're doing a stochastic gradient descent. How much do I want to move in the direction of the gradient is what is learning rate. Okay, it's a question of terminology. Please understand that there is a difference in calling it a learning rate. Yes, it is updating your Q value based on what is the old value and how much weight I want to place on the old value.
So there's an expectation here, and in that expectation, what we're doing is we're doing a weighted average of the new thing and the old Q.
Correct. It's a weighted average, and you're defining how much weight am I putting on my old value and how much weight am I putting on the new update. Okay, all right. Any other questions? All right, you can move ahead, Rohit.
So, but I checked with several websites now, and everything, this alpha is specified as learning rate only in Q learning.
Okay, all right. We will discuss that a little later. So do share with me that information. I would like to know if I'm wrong.
Okay. So, inherently, in Q learning, there is no, the agent always chooses the value corresponding the maximum Q value in a particular state. So, but for the agent to understand the environment completely, it needs to take random actions and do some exploration. Otherwise, you have the risk of ending up in a minima. So, for that, you want to introduce some exploration in the algorithm. You do that by using epsilon greedy algorithm. So what does this is, you choose an action corresponding to the maximum Q value with the probability of 1 minus epsilon, and you choose some random action with the probability epsilon. Yeah, any doubt in this epsilon greedy?
Okay, why do you need epsilon greedy algorithms? What is its primary use?
To make the agent explore.
Should this epsilon value be constant throughout your training exercises, or should it change?
Yes, sir, I'll explain that. So, initially at the start of the training process, you might want to do a lot of training, exploration, and but towards the end, you want to reduce the exploration and you want to exploit the Q values that you already know. So yes, the the preferred option is that epsilon usually dies down with the training. Initially, it has a high value, and towards the end, the epsilon value gets reduced gradually.
Actions, like, are there a certain set of actions only which we can perform, or like actions are not limited or not defined?
Okay, so in Q-learning, both states and actions are discrete, as you have seen. So in this set of discrete actions, you can take anything. If you're talking about the random action here, yes.
So in your case, is the state and the action both discrete?
So I use DQ when my actions are discrete, but my states are continuous.
Yes. Okay. Any other queries?
So in your case, the action is the rudder angle, right?
Yes, my action is a rudder angle. Yes.
Okay.
And you have 3 actions.
Yes. Yes.
And what is the states in your case? S.
I'll come to that.
Okay.
Right now, I'm just explaining the algorithm alone.
So actions are only 3, or any rudder angle is possible?
Yeah, any rudder angle is possible. I chose just 3. Yeah.
So what does random action mean? Is it
Just,
rudder angle apart from the three or from that?
no, in the 3. In the 3.
Okay, so you won't, when you're doing a random action, you won't pick the action with the maximum Q, but some other action.
Exactly. Exactly. So the problem with Q learning is that you have to maintain a Q table with many Q values, and also the state space is discrete, which is unlike all the real life problems that we face. So Q learning is just a model example, and it's not in many cases used in to solve real life problems. So for next we go with DQN. So in DQN, what you do is, instead of having a Q table where you refer the state and the action and get a Q value, you are giving the states as an input to a neural network, and this acts as a function approximator and gives you the approximate Q values as an output. So given any state, as an input to the neural network, it gives me all the Q values corresponding to the various actions possible as output. This part is clear. And
yeah, I think by default you should assume if anybody has a question, they should feel free to ask. Don't wait for and ask for, is this clear? You keep proceeding with your presentation. As and when there are questions, people will stop you and ask questions. That is better.
okay, sir. Okay.
So output of a neural network will be like
Q values.
Q values
Yes.
of all the 10 actions, or all the n actions.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And Q value for representation purpose, I am using Q value now as with respect to theta. Theta here being the parameters, the weights and biases of the neural network. So as the neural network weights and weights changes, the Q value estimated outputs changes. So since I cannot change the individual Q values here, I'm playing around with the theta here. And the aim is to now get the optimal value, the theta value for which the Q values have converged. Yes.
So what do theta actually mean in this network?
The weights and the biases of the Q of the network.
All right.
So yes, this is the algorithm. The agent takes an action based on the Q values outputted by the neural network, and for that you go to a different state and you get a reward, and based on the rewards the neural network is tuned. And I'll explain how the neural network updation process happens, but before that, There is one more thing in DQN which is not present in Q-learning, that is experience replay. So if you remember in Q-learning, you update the Q values based on the most recent experience. So as soon as you go from the state S to S prime, you update the Q value of the state S. But in DQN, you store all these in a form of transitions. So a transition consists of the state, the action that you took, the reward that you got, and the state you landed in. And you'll be storing all these transitions in a replay buffer. And then what you do is you sample batches of these data transition from the replay buffer, and then use it to train the neural network. So there are mainly two advantages here. One is that you are reusing past data instead of just using it once. And the second advantage is that since you are picking random samples here and there, there is no correlation which might lead to error. Yeah.
So what might happen in case if we did not choose them randomly?
What happens is in most cases there are correlations between the updates, and that causes problems. I'm not sure how that the error arises, but yes, that is eliminated here.
Yeah, I think kind of what you want to say there is, as you take one action is, as you said, they're correlated to each other. If I
Yes,
take
sir.
only the actions from one run rather than randomizely picking from all the different episodes, then what will happen is I will bias towards that one run which I made in the end. And that need not always be the most optimal policy.
Yes.
And it may bias my model in one way or to behave in a certain way, which may not necessarily be optimal because of those correlations. All right.
So now coming to how I'm updating the Q network. So updating the Q network is done by optimizer. I'm using Adam optimizer in this case. So I will not go exactly into the mathematical details of how the parameters are chosen by the optimizer, but the main max behind it is that it tries to minimize a loss function. So basically, the loss function here for DQN is that it's yi minus q of q value of the particular state. So here, basically, yi is r plus gamma max. This is the same expression altogether that we saw here in the q value updation equation. So basically, what you're doing is you are trying to reduce the square of this term, except that now it's no longer old q value and new q value because the network parameters are changing. So it is the net q value estimated with the old parameters and the q value estimated with the new parameters here. Any doubts?
Yeah, I have a doubt. This is from my understanding, since some of you have told me that that one is called learning rate. Is there a learning rate associated with this network specifically? Is that parameter also alpha?
Yes, sir. There will be a learning rate.
And is that the same alpha which you have seen before? I somehow have a strong feeling that they should be different.
Yeah, they're different. The optimizer uses a different learning rate.
Learning rate, yes, sir. This one is used by the Adam optimizer.
This optimizer is something like a gradient descent thing with its separate weight and the learning rate.
And I would call that the learning rate, ideally. But
yes.
Okay.
Like the meaning behind the learning rate in the RL case is if you make it bigger, it learns faster, doesn't necessarily converge faster.
Come again?
If you increase the other alpha in the RL Q learning algorithm, it will learn faster, but it won't converge faster. It may not converge.
It may not converge faster. Correct.
So that is something like the reason behind why it's called the learning, right?
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Here, can you explain the yi part? Like, what is the theta we are using there, and
So,
what is the theta in the error loss
yes,
function?
this is the theta I minus 1 is the theta parameter that you're currently using. And theta I is basically you are seeing what should be theta I so that the loss function is minimum. You're trying to estimate theta I minus 1 you already have. That is the current parameter that you're using.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. Now, now that we have seen RL, let's see how it can be used to solve the problem of ship navigation. So this is a problem statement. My ship starts at the initial point and it has to reach a destination point. And I'm defining two terms now, the cross-track error and the course angle error. So the cross-track error is basically the perpendicular distance from the line joining the initial and final waypoints and my ship's center. And the course angle error is the angle between the ship's current heading and the line joining the ship's coordinate and the destination coordinate. So this angle is a course angle error and this will be the cross-track error. Okay, and I'm defining the vectors which I'll use later. So I'm using vector 1. Vector 1 is just a unit vector in the direction of the line joining initial and final waypoints.
Rohit, can you come back to course angle error one more time for my benefit?
Yes, sir.
Tell me what was course angle error here?
So course angle error is the angle between the ship's current heading and the and this vector. Vector 2
is that heading defined with respect to the velocity or is it defined with respect to the longitudinal direction of the ship?
Velocity.
It is taken with respect to the velocity.
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's not taken with respect to the longitudinal direction of the ship?
No, sir.
You sure about this? I am having second thoughts on the fact that you may have programmed it correctly, but you are making the convention wrong is what I'm thinking. But are you certain it is the direction with respect to the velocity? Ideally, the heading angle should be with respect to the, as we discussed before on the first slide, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
But it is here taken with respect to velocity.
Yes, sir.
We might want to check up on that, okay? We will
Okay,
do
sir.
that.
I'll check once. Yes, sir.
So, like, shouldn't the aim be like the velocity should be aligned with V2?
No,
Yes.
that is true, but how the angle or course angle is defined, or the error in the course angle is defined, is slightly different. Ideally, you see, if the ship is oriented with its velocity directed along V2, then the course angle error will be 0 anyway. Now, the question is, when it is non-zero, is it defined with respect to the longitudinal direction of the ship, or is it defined with respect to the velocity vector of the ship? Because those two need not be the same when the ship is not on the direct course.
Yes, sir. Like, say we are measuring it with respect to BCS, the longitudinal direction of the ship,
Correct.
and the velocity of the ship is not in the direction of V2. Like, our course angle will be 0, but that is not the desired thing that we want.
Correct. So in this case, you could think, yeah, I think you have given a very good example. If this velocity vector was actually oriented along V2, but the ship's longitudinal direction was not oriented along this, then it would mean that it's kind of drifting and going in that direction.
Yeah.
And that is not precisely what we want. So I would think that the course angle should always be defined with respect to the longitudinal direction of the ship. And that is why I'm kind of trying to ask him so many times to the point of bugging him. But okay, all right.
So next, coming to the action state, as I already said, three actions are possible at every time step. The RL controller either chooses an action of -20 degrees, 0, or 20 degrees. And if the input to the neural network consists of 4 variables: the cross-track error that I showed you, cos-angle error, distance to the destination waypoints, and the yaw rate. And so this is how I'm calculating the cross-track error that I just showed you. So cross-track error will be just a cross product of the vector 2 and the vector 1. And the cos-angle error it's just an angle between V2 and the ship's heading. And yes, this is the reward functions that I am using. I am using 3 rewards, one corresponding to the cross-track error, one corresponding to the cos-angle error, and the other corresponding to the distance. And yes, I'm summing it all up before storing it in the replay buffer. And okay, I'll show you individual plots of these. So this is the plot between all.
Any particular reason to choose this?
Yes, trial and error. And basically, one of the papers I saw that they used exponential rewards and got good results. So yes, I went ahead and for exponential rewards.
So, like, did you decide the coefficients based on some paper, or it was random?
Trial and error. Everything trial and error. Yes.
Again, no tuning. So you just did for multiple cases and decided on.
And yes. Yeah.
The trial and error is the tuning, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
So this is the R1 versus cross-track error plot. So here, if you see that around the value of sidetrack error is equal to 2.9, if the cross-track error crosses 2.9, the R1 becomes negative. And yes, the R1 is 0 when the cross-track error is 0, essentially when ship is following the correct path. And this is a plot for cos-angle error. And yes, roughly when the heading angle error becomes greater than 0.3 radians, the reward goes to negative.
No, this is also an exponential function, isn't it?
Yes, this is also exponential function, sir.
But it has a very sharp non-differential point at x equal to 0 or cos angle equal to 0.
Yes, it's 10 here. That's why it's very sharp.
No, I'm thinking either way you go. No. So why is
I think it is because square and mod.
Can you go back to the mathematical expression?
Yes, sir.
Okay, one is the square and the other is the mod.
Yes, sir.
This is the mod. Okay. But I still would have thought it would be differentiable. Positive or negative? Okay, but there's a sharp curve there. Okay. I see now why. Okay, because of not having the square there.
Yes.
Okay.
So this thing doesn't have to be differentiable, right? Reward function.
Ideally, you would want it to be differentiable.
Yes, the optimizer finds it easier to tune when it is differentiable.
I mean, in general sense, because you're going to take gradients and you are trying to learn that behavior, you want to kind of keep things differentiable in general.
Yes.
Did you try with square also?
Yes, I have tried. This gave better results. That's why I picked it.
Okay.
So next comes the terminating condition. So there are two ways when an episode can get terminated. Either when it reaches a destination waypoint, so the episode ends successfully. So I am giving it a tolerance of 0.5 ship lengths. So anywhere it comes between 0.5 ship lengths of the destination waypoints, the episode ends, and it is considered to be a successful episode. On the other hand, I have to figure out if the ship missed the destination point. So in that case, I have to override and manually terminate the episode. So for that, I'm using two angles, angle 1 and angle 2. Angle 1 is the vector between it's the v1 and v2 vectors that I showed you. I'll go back to the picture once again now. And so it's the angle 1 is the angle between vectors v1 and v2. So basically, if you see anywhere on this side of the plane, when the ship's coordinate is present, the angle between v1 and v2 will be less than 90 degrees. But as soon as, if it comes here, if you can visualize that it is going to be a 90-degree angle between the vector v1 and v2. And as soon as it goes to the other side of the plane, the angle crosses 90 degree. And the second condition that I used was angle 2. That is basically the angle between the ship's heading and the vector v2. So why I included the angle was that even if the ship crosses the plane and goes to the other side, if its velocity is still aimed at the destination point, the episode will not terminate and will continue. And yes, now I'll talk about how I'm training. Training takes place over a number of episodes. I chose for up to 15,000 episodes for training. So at the start of every episode, the ship will be at the origin point and it will be heading in the positive x direction. It will have all the acceleration 0 except for the surge velocity, which will be equal to the design speed. And at the start of every episode, I will select a random point as a destination coordinate. And the aim of the agent is to reach the destination coordinate. So how I am selecting the random coordinate is that I'm choosing a circle of various varying radius. And then after picking up a random radius, I'm choosing a random point on the circle. And I'm making sure the radius is big enough that the ship can is able to turn and reach the point. You don't want to keep it below the turning circle radius. Your ship won't be able to reach it. And yes, these are the results that I obtained. This is the plot between the returns as the episode progresses. So initially, if you see the total returns is negative, it goes up to minus 1,500 at some cases. And finally, after training, it comes to around this range. You see that the return does not converge to a constant value. This is because for each episode, I'm choosing a different destination point, and the return of the episode does not necessarily remain the same for a different destination point because it changes with respect to the location of the destination point and how much distance is between the initial and the final waypoint. And this is the plot of the loss function that I showed you earlier. As you can see, initially the loss is very high as the learning process is going on, and once the learning process is completed, and after 8,000 episodes, around 9,000 episodes, you see that the loss function has died down to 0. And after this, I tested the model to see if it is able to reach random points generated. So yes, this is the plot of the ship trying to reach the plot point 10, 10. So the x and y is all mentioned in terms of ship length. So it is like 10 root to ship lengths away from origin. Initially,
in the previous figure, returns means rewards, right?
Okay. I defined returns, right? Returns is basically summation of the discounted rewards in an episode.
Okay. So that R1, R2, and R3.
Yes. R1 plus gamma R2 plus gamma square R3. That is the return. Yes.
So it is the value from your Q value what you're getting. Because
Yes,
it
sir.
is discounted.
Yes, sir.
So this is the Q values at each time step you're adding them up. And that's
So,
this one. I would
this
have
is
thought
for
it is simple summation of all the rewards you get at all the time steps. No?
yes, sir. For each episode. So this is versus episodes, not time steps. Yes, sir.
Correct. So for each episode, that would be the case. And at the end, whatever is the reward left, that is the point you have plotted. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
So then it is not discounted. It is simply the exact rewards it has got over that episode, summed up till the termination happened.
So, yeah, it is discounted, sir. Yes.
How is it discounted?
I am discounting it. Yes.
So you take the episode and you find out all the rewards after the episode has terminated. You are calculating from the first point.
So I don't do the calculation. It is automatically outputted by the optimizer.
No, but I'm
But
still not following. How can it be a discounted reward? Discounted reward, I understand when you are trying to take an action, right? You're thinking about what might happen in the future. Based on that, I'm trying to take a corrective action now.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir. I understand now. Yes, sir. So yes, this won't be discounted. Yes, sir.
You want to confirm that, okay? You want
Okay,
to
sir.
make sure that this is not something discounted. It should be nothing. It should have nothing to do with discounted, ideally.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So right now it is just sum of the rewards for each
Yes,
episode.
yeah. Just a sum of rewards of each episode. Yes.
Okay.
So these are the results that I obtained for destination waypoints in the different quadrants. And yes, since the agent is able to successfully reach destination points, I tried doing, I want to see if it is able to track a trajectory. So I chose a ellipse and discretized its perimeter into waypoints and saw if the agent is able to reach the destination waypoints and track the trajectory.
You should explain what's going on there.
So, yeah, okay. Initially, yes, all the accelerations and except for u velocity, everything else is 0. The ship is located on this coordinate 9, 0. So the equation of the ellipse is x squared by 9 plus y squared by 6 is equal to 1. So we have a major axis length of 9 and minor axis length of 6. And the initial orientation is in the positive y direction, psi is equal to 90. And yes, the ship is able to reach all the waypoints here. You see some oscillations here because the distance between the waypoints are not even on the ellipse. So towards the minor axis end, the end of major axis ends, the waypoints come closer and the ship does not have enough distance to turn and reach the other points perfectly. So you see some oscillations here. But later, when the waypoint gets distance again, the ship stabilizes and yes, it is finally able to reach all the 18 waypoints.
Do we know the curvature at all points in the ellipse?
The radius of curvature, sir.
Yes. If you know the curvature, the inverse of it will be the radius of curvature.
Yes, sir. I can calculate, but no, I don't have it ready now.
But I would like to see really that if any at all of these waypoints that you have chosen, is there any waypoint where the radius of curvature on the curve, on the ellipse curve, is less than the
Turning circle.
maximum circle that you can make?
Yes.
That will give us information on why it will kind of explain better as to why this is happening.
Yes,
And
sir.
it is happening really for that reason or not.
Okay.
Rohit, can you go back to the previous image? So here the red point is the starting position, right?
No, it starts from 0, 0 for all the plots that I showed you, and this is the destination point. Yes.
So the initial velocity is given at random by you, or is it always?
No, initial velocity is always along positive x direction. So yes, ship is starting to go in this direction, then makes a turn and comes here.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, that's it. Any questions?
All right. Any questions?
Can you go to that the slide just after the DNQ? Yeah, after this.
Yeah.
After this. One after this.
Oh,
After this. The slide after this.
yeah. Okay.
No, one after this. I think. Where is that slide when you? Maybe it's after this. I think. While after this. One after this. I think like you explained this the difference of the normal Q-learning and the slide on which sir asked about the difference in the alphas.
This one.
This is for Q-learning and the one for the DNQ.
This one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This one. In this, this Q SA theta I is there, and
Yeah.
In the previous one, the old one was subtracted,
Yes.
but here theta minus I is before, and the theta I is later. I wanted to ask about that.
So yeah. Yes, yeah, that's the difference here. So yes, theta is a new network parameters that you're trying to find such that this loss is minimum. And yes, theta I minus 1 is the current parameters that you are using. Yes, before updating.
It's opposite to the sense that like in the previous one we are subtracting the old ones. Here we are subtracting the later ones, the newer ones.
Yes, in the old case it was Q old here. Yeah, yes, you are right. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask why is that the case? Like,
yeah, not sure why that is the case, but this is a loss function.
Oh, come on. You know why that is the case. Don't say that I don't know why that is the case. Why is it theta I here?
So, what he's asking is that in the case of Q learning, it was the old Q value which was subtracted here, but here it is the theta is the new value that you are trying to find.
Correct. So why is that the case? Why is that the case? Think about your network. What is it trying to do? It's trying to minimize the error between something and something, isn't it? What are
Yes,
those
sir.
things? What are the two things that is trying to minimize the error between the two? It's trying to minimize the error between yi and what your network will give as an output.
Yes, sir.
Right? And that
Yes.
yi is only defined with respect to whatever is the previous parameter set that you have. You don't know theta I here in order to predict yi using theta I. Right? Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Theta is only changing here. The parameter is changing.
Yes, sir.
Right? But whereas that is depicting a completely different scenario, the Q-learning algorithm.
Yes, sir.
It is telling you that if I move from one state to the next state, how will the Q value change? This is trying to tell you, after I know what the Q value is, train my network to make sure that I get the new Q value correct. No? You're not understanding?
No, sir. I'm not
Like,
understanding.
it's like the table itself changed.
Correct. The table itself has updated now. So for that updated table, you want to change your network to output the new updated table. That is what this step is about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This has no relationship with the calculation of the Q value. The calculation of the Q value still happens the same way. The new Q value still gets calculated using the same old formula. Here you are only training your network to now output the new Q values which are corresponding to the updated values. That back
Yes, sir.
propagation is what you're running here.
Yes, sir.
Did that make sense, Vallabh?
Yeah, yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions? We're going to wrap up. If not. All right. Let me stop recording now.